I watched a fascinating movie a couple of weeks ago called Stranger Than Fiction. Have you seen this movie? All right. It stars Will Ferrell, but it's a definite departure from his usual shtick. Ferrell plays Harold Crick, an auditor for the Internal Revenue Service. And one day Harold begins to hear the voice of a woman describing his thoughts and his actions in real time. So while he's brushing his teeth, he hears a voice saying, "Harold brushes his teeth exactly 76 times, 38 vertical strokes, 38 horizontal," and so on. He discovers that he is a character in a story being written by this woman. And he becomes obsessed, as you might imagine, with finding out how the story ends. Harold goes to see a literature professor who's played by Dustin Hoffman, and he tells him that there are basically two kinds of stories: comedies and tragedies. Comedies aren't necessarily ha-ha funny. A comedy is a story with a happy ending. The main character wins, the hero saves the day, the couple rides off into the sunset together, everybody lives happily ever after. That's a comedy. In a tragedy, the story has a very different ending. The main character dies. Harold needs to figure out quickly if his story is a comedy or a tragedy. Well, I won't tell you what happens to Harold. You can see the movie for yourself. But it occurs to me that this same question hangs over our lives and everything we do. What kind of story are we living? A comedy or a tragedy? The disciples thought they knew what kind of story they were living. It had been a beautiful story. In their time with Jesus, they had learned and seen and done more than they ever thought possible. The mother of all wedding parties with the best wine in the world, the rabble-rousing in the temple, feeding the crowds with just 5 loaves and 2 fish, all the wonderful, crazy things Jesus had said and done. It had been an amazing, dizzying journey. But now it was over. Jesus was a prophet and a dreamer, and we all know how these things turn out. As with so many prophets and dreamers before and since, the powers that be got fed up with Jesus and they killed him. It had been a beautiful story, but it had a tragic ending. Only that wasn't the end, which is why we're here today. Mary Magdalene came to the tomb on that first Easter Sunday. It's not really clear why. Maybe she couldn't let go. Maybe she couldn't accept that the story was really over. She found something unexpected. The stone had been rolled away from the tomb. And after the other disciples came and looked in, they did something really strange. Did you catch it? They went home. That seems odd to me. You'd think they'd at least be curious and want to stick around to kind of figure out what had happened. But no, they went home. Maybe they still thought the story was over, and so there was nothing to do but go home and get on with their lives. But Mary stayed. She stood weeping outside the tomb, and because of that, because she stayed, because she stuck it out, because she couldn't or wouldn't believe that the story was over, she became the first witness to the good news. The story was not over. Jesus was alive. Death did not get the last word. The powers that be, religion and politics, they didn't get the last word either. God got the last word. And what looked for all the world like a tragedy turned out to be a comedy after all. Well, this is it, folks. This is really ground zero for our faith. It is the most outrageous, it is the most foolhardy thing we can say. Our story, the whole sad, wonderful human story, the whole story of creation is not a tragedy. So says our faith. It is a comedy. When we get to the last page, when it all comes down and the dust finally settles, somehow, some way, the story will have a happy ending. Maybe that faith can give us courage to follow Mary's example. She stayed outside the tomb. She stuck it out. Everyone else gave up and went home. The story was over. The book was closed. But Mary refused to accept that. Woody Allen once said something like, 90% of life is just showing up. Maybe the other 10% is staying put. I think that's what faith is all about. Sticking it out in the broken places of life, refusing to give up and go home, trusting that though this looks for all the world like the end of a very tragic story, God is still God. The story's not over yet. There's still hope. In the words found scrawled on a cellar wall where Jews had hidden during World War II, I believe in the sun even when it isn't shining. I believe in love even when I am alone. I believe in God even when God is silent. The Lord of the Rings, the best movies ever made, from the best books ever written, tells the story of a desperate quest to rid the world of a terrible weapon, a terrible evil. Frodo and Sam are hobbits, little people caught up in this awful adventure. At one point in the story, all hope seems lost, and Frodo says to Sam, "I can't do this." Sam replies, "I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are." It's like in the great stories, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't even want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something even if you were too small to understand why. But I think I do understand. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to? Frodo asks. Sam answers that there's something good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. Of course, as Christians, we fight not with swords or guns or bombs, but with justice and kindness and compassion. But the point still stands. This is Easter faith. A faith that won't turn back, a faith that won't give up and won't give in, a faith that sticks it out in the broken places of life and won't let the story end until God has written the last page. This is an audacious thing we proclaim today. It's an audacious hope. There is so desperately much pain and death, love lost, lives destroyed, hopes scattered before the wind. But Easter whispers to us, it will be all right. Whatever comes, unwanted, unacceptable, unavoidable, it will be all right. In a way we may not be able to imagine or pray for, it will somehow be all right. Or as Teresa of Avila put it, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things will be well. May it be so for you and for me and for all creation. Thanks be to God. Amen.